In the glittering constellation of silent film stars, one flame-haired comet blazed brighter than all others. Clara Bow, the original It Girl, didn't just appear in movies. She revolutionized what it meant to be a movie star. Those expressive eyes that seemed to speak directly to each viewer, that infectious smile that lit up even the darkest theater. Clara wasn't just another pretty face. She was the roaring 20s personified. Born into Brooklyn poverty, yet destined for Hollywood immortality, Clara's journey from tenement tragedy to silver screen sensation reads like fiction, too wild for even the movies. When she starred in 1927's aptly named It, she didn't just play a character with indefinable magnetism, she bottled lightning and sold it to America by the millions. Not bad for a girl whose childhood featured more horror than Hollywood glamour. What made Clara extraordinary wasn't merely her beauty. Her genius lay in her authenticity in an industry built on illusion. While contemporaries performed with theatrical restraint, Clara exploded with raw emotion. She didn't act, she existed on screen, displaying a naturalism decades ahead of its time. Her characters, and Clara herself, loved, laughed, and cried with an intensity that audiences found irresistible. Yet behind the flapper persona, an iconic bob haircut lived a complex woman whose off-screen drama rivaled her cinematic triumphs. Join us through the extraordinary life of cinema's first true supernova, a star whose brilliant light continues inspiring artists today, from Madonna to Taylor Swift, reminding us that sometimes the most spectacular flames burn both the brightest and briefest. Clara Bow entered the world on July 29, 1905, in circumstances that could charitably be called challenging. Her birthplace, a dilapidated tenement in Brooklyn's Bay Ridge neighborhood, sat perched above a Baptist church, though divine intervention remained notably absent from the Bow family's daily existence. Robert Bow, Clara's father, embodied unreliability. A handsome yet chronically unemployed man with penchants for alcohol and gambling, he drifted between odd jobs while rarely contributing meaningfully to household expenses. When present, he alternated between indifference and hostility toward his wife and daughter. Clara Bow, Clara's mother, battled demons far beyond poverty. Suffering from what modern psychiatrists would diagnose as schizophrenia, Clara experienced violent episodes, hallucinations, and extended periods of catatonia. The condition stemmed partially from a head injury suffered before Clara's birth. Her pregnancy with Clara followed several heartbreaks, including the deaths of two infant daughters from illness or malnutrition. The family dynamic created a paradoxical childhood. While most children receive care from parents, Clara essentially parented her mother from an early age. By 7, she managed cooking, cleaning, and Sarah's unpredictable episodes. Neighbors occasionally glimpsed the small red-headed child dragging her catatonic mother indoors, struggling under adult responsibilities no child should bear. The tenement building represented everything wrong with early 20th century urban poverty. Rats and roaches claimed equal tenancy rights, communal bathrooms served multiple families, and the stench of garbage permeated every corner. For young Clara, these surroundings reinforced one motivation: escape. Clara's early years unfolded against Brooklyn's industrial backdrop. As a child, she possessed striking features, vibrant auburn hair earning her the nickname the Brooklyn Bonfire, expressive eyes, and natural athleticism. Yet these attributes offered little advantage where survival, not self-expression, dominated daily concerns. School provided minimal refuge. Clara's attendance proved spotty, as maternal care duties frequently kept her from classrooms. When present, she struggled academically while excelling physically, particularly in running events. Her ill-fitting hand-me-downs marked her as impoverished among classmates, triggering cruel taunts that intensified her innate shyness. Local theaters offered temporary escape from grim reality, and Clara frequently skipped school for these flickering fantasies. Inside darkened theaters, she studied actresses with the intensity of an apprentice learning invaluable trade secrets. These cinematic experiences shaped not just Clara's career ambitions, but her conception of womanhood beyond Brooklyn's limited horizons. Relationships with other children proved complicated. Clara's home responsibilities limited socialization opportunities, while her mother's condition created embarrassing situations. Neighborhood children sometimes mocked Sarah during public episodes, causing Clara to develop a protective fierceness that occasionally erupted into physical confrontations with tormentors. By age 10, Clara had weathered experiences that would crush most adults. She had nursed her mother through countless breakdowns, managed a household without resources, and developed survival mechanisms prioritizing immediate needs. Yet remarkably, she maintained capacity for joy, found primarily through athletic activities that temporarily freed her from oppressive responsibilities. Clara's adolescence brought challenges that further shaped her complex personality. Physical development arrived early, attracting unwanted attention from neighborhood men, including, horrifyingly, her father. At 16, Robert Bow allegedly attempted to assault Clara during one of Sarah's hospitalizations. This betrayal created permanent fissures in Clara's ability to trust male authority figures, while accelerating her determination to escape Brooklyn permanently. Perhaps the most harrowing formative experience occurred when Clara was 17. Sarah, experiencing a severe psychotic episode, failed to recognize her daughter and became convinced Clara represented a threat. While Clara slept, Sarah entered her bedroom wielding a butcher knife, intent on killing her. Only Clara's quick reflexes prevented tragedy. The incident necessitated Sarah's institutionalization and forced Clara to acknowledge her mother would never provide the emotional stability children rightfully expect from parents. Brooklyn itself shaped Clara's worldview significantly. The early 20th century borough represented America's socioeconomic disparities in microcosm. Clara witnessed both grinding poverty and tantalizing glimpses of wealth, developing acute awareness of social stratification that would later inform her portrayals across class divides. A pivotal moment arrived when Clara encountered a magazine advertisement for the Fame and Fortune film contest promising the winner a movie role. Despite significant obstacles, including lack of professional photographs and appropriate clothing, Clara entered the contest in 1921. This represented her first concrete step toward transforming fantasy into reality, requiring courage more substantial than mere daydreaming. By contest entry time, 18-year-old Clara had survived experiences that would overwhelm most adults. She had essentially raised herself while caring for a severely mentally ill mother and avoiding an untrustworthy father. Yet remarkably, these experiences hadn't extinguished her capacity for joy, enthusiasm, and ambition, qualities that would soon propel her from Brooklyn obscurity to Hollywood immortality. For most Hollywood stars, the path to fame follows a predictable pattern: beauty pageants, chance encounters with agents, or family connections. Clara Bow's journey resembled less a golden staircase than a treacherous mountain climb. When 16-year-old Clara spotted an advertisement for the Fame and Fortune contest in Motion Picture magazine, it represented her first glimpse of escape from Brooklyn's crushing poverty. The contest promised the winner a movie role, a fantasy seemingly impossible for Clara's reality. Yet something about this opportunity sparked a rare flame of hope. With determination, Clara scraped together money for professional photographs, an expense that meant going without meals. Her father dismissed her ambitions with cruel laughter, telling her no one would look twice at a mutt like you. His words, intended to crush her spirit, instead hardened her resolve. Against astronomical odds, Clara advanced through preliminary rounds. Judge Howard Chandler Christie later recalled being struck not by Clara's conventional beauty, but by her extraordinary eyes and concentrated vitality. When final results appeared in January 1922's Motion Picture magazine, Clara's name topped the list. Victory brought disappointment rather than instant stardom. Despite the promised role, Clara received only minor consideration for bit parts. For months, she persisted, visiting studios daily and facing endless rejection. This period revealed Clara's incredible resilience. Where other contest winners might have surrendered, Clara transformed each rejection into renewed determination. Her persistence yielded results when director Elmer Clifton cast her in Beyond the Rainbow 1922, though her scenes were ultimately cut from the final print. Real opportunity arrived when Clifton remembered the unusual redhead while casting Down to the Sea in Ships 1922. Clara's first substantial role demanded physical rigor few actresses would attempt, including being dragged through water by a thrashing whale, a stunt Clara performed herself despite legitimate danger. Director Benjamin P. Schulberg proved instrumental in Clara's professional development. After seeing footage from Down to the Sea in Ships, he immediately offered Clara a contract with Preferred Pictures. The arrangement required Clara's relocation to Hollywood, a move representing both tremendous opportunity and complete separation from her only stable connection, her childhood friend Catherine. Despite the trauma of leaving everything familiar, Clara boarded a train west in 1923, carrying minimal possessions and maximum determination. Hollywood of the early 1920s represented the entertainment industry's wild frontier. Studios sprouted across sun-baked landscapes, converting orange groves into movie lots practically overnight. This chaotic environment offered unique opportunities for genuine talent to rise without traditional credentials, perfect for Clara's unconventional gifts. Clara's initial Hollywood reception proved disorienting. Studio executives assessed her with clinical detachment, discussing physical attributes as though evaluating livestock. Her Brooklyn accent drew immediate criticism. Her unfashionable clothes and lack of social polish made industry socialization awkward. Under Schulberg's guidance, Clara secured roles in several modestly budgeted productions. Films like Maytime 1923 and Black Oxen 1923 provided opportunities to develop her craft while adapting to Hollywood's technical requirements. The latter film paired Clara with established star Corinne Griffith, creating a striking contrast between Griffith's practiced elegance and Clara's natural exuberance. Clara's work ethic during this period bordered on maniacal. While other actresses demanded specific accommodations and limited working hours, Clara accepted any role, any schedule, any challenge. This determination stemmed partly from financial necessity. Despite increasing recognition, Schulberg kept Clara on a surprisingly modest salary. The physical transformation accompanying Clara's professional rise was dramatic. The awkward Brooklyn teenager evolved into a quintessential flapper practically overnight. Clara embraced the iconic bob haircut long before many contemporaries dared such radical styling. Her expressive eyes, her most distinctive feature, received emphasis through the period's dramatic makeup techniques. Clara's earliest noteworthy achievement came with Wine 1924, a Prohibition-era drama capitalizing on cultural fascination with flappers and speakeasies. Unlike previous roles where Clara appeared briefly amid ensemble casts, Wine positioned her as the central attraction. Favorable reviews specifically praised her naturalistic approach amid contemporaries, whose performances retained theatrical artificiality. Director Victor Fleming provided crucial professional guidance during this formative period. Unlike some directors who attempted to restrain Clara's natural expressiveness, Fleming recognized her unique appeal stemmed precisely from that uninhibited quality. Under his direction in films like Mantrap 1926, Clara developed techniques for channeling her natural expressiveness rather than suppressing it. By 1925, Clara had graduated from supporting roles to leading lady status through sheer audience demand. Fan mail volumes indicated viewers responded with unusual enthusiasm, particularly appreciating her seeming accessibility. Unlike contemporaries who projected untouchable perfection, Clara conveyed an approachable quality that suggested relatability despite increasing fame. This period witnessed Clara's development of her characteristic screen persona, the vibrant, uninhibited flapper who approached life with enthusiastic abandon. This character type aligned perfectly with 1920s cultural fascination with youth rebellion and feminine liberation. Clara intuitively understood audiences craved authenticity amid social transformation. Her natural exuberance perfectly embodied the era's rejection of Victorian restraint. Clara's acting technique developed from intuitive rather than formal sources. Having never studied traditional methods, she relied on emotional memory, unconsciously drawing from her traumatic childhood to inform performances. This approach produced results seeming decades ahead of contemporary standards. While most silent film actors employed broad gestures and exaggerated expressions, Clara utilized subtle emotional shifts recognizable to modern viewers accustomed to naturalistic performance. Critics noted Clara's distinctive physical expressiveness. Unlike contemporaries who emphasized static beauty, Clara employed her entire being, face, body, even fingertips, to communicate emotion. This kinetic quality particularly suited silent cinema, where physical expressiveness compensated for absent dialogue. By 1926, Clara Bow had established herself among Hollywood's most reliable box office attractions. Her films consistently performed well commercially even when critical reception proved mixed. What Clara lacked was that singular defining role, the perfect vehicle that would elevate her from popular performer to cultural phenomenon. That transformative opportunity awaited just around the corner, in the form of a two-letter word that would forever alter both Clara's career and American popular culture itself. In Hollywood mythology, certain roles become inseparable from their performers. For Clara Bow, 1927's it represents that quintessential fusion between actress and character, transforming a rising star into an enduring cultural icon whose influence extends nearly a century beyond her heyday. The film's genesis began with British novelist Eleanor Glyn, whose provocative writings introduced the concept of it, an ineffable quality combining magnetic attraction, confidence, and natural sex appeal that transcended conventional beauty. According to Glyn, very few people possessed genuine it. You either had it naturally or forever lacked it. When Paramount decided to build a film around this intriguing concept, the actress selection became crucial. Clara wasn't initially considered for the role. Studio executives first approached established stars with conventional beauty and sophisticated images. After viewing Clara's previous performances, Glyn declared with absolute certainty, "That girl needn't act it, she is it." The film's storyline seems simple. A department store salesgirl rises from obscurity through sheer magnetism, ultimately winning the heart of the store's wealthy owner. Director Clarence Badger constructed scenes specifically highlighting Clara's physical expressiveness, natural vivacity, and emotional authenticity. The camera adored Clara in ways that transcended standard glamour photography, capturing an irrepressible vitality practically vibrating from the screen. When it premiered on February 19, 1927, audience reaction proved immediate and overwhelming. Viewers instinctively understood what Glyn had articulated. Clara possessed an indefinable magnetic quality transcending traditional beauty standards. Reviews praised her performance as incandescent and revolutionary. Within weeks, theaters across America displayed marquees reading simply "Clara Bow is IT. No further explanation necessary." The film's cultural impact extended beyond box office receipts. It transformed Clara from popular performer to genuine phenomenon virtually overnight. Attendance records shattered across the country. Department stores reported unprecedented demand for clothing resembling Clara's outfits. Beauty parlors nationwide filled with women requesting the Clara, a distinctive bob hairstyle featuring that characteristic kiss curl adorning her forehead. Most significantly, it permanently altered American vocabulary. Virtually overnight, It Girl entered the lexicon as shorthand for a woman possessing magnetic appeal, confidence, and sexual frankness. Nearly a century later, It Girl remains immediately recognizable terminology, a testament to Clara's enduring cultural significance. For Clara personally, it represented both triumph and turning point. Her performance silenced critics who had dismissed her as merely cute rather than talented. Yet paradoxically, this career pinnacle introduced unprecedented personal challenges. Clara's fame reached overwhelming proportions. Public appearances triggered near riots as thousands attempted to glimpse her. The Brooklyn girl who once dreamed of escaping anonymity now found herself imprisoned by recognition discovering fame's isolating effects alongside its privileges. Lightning rarely strikes twice in identical locations, yet 1927 delivered Clara Bow an extraordinary dual achievement. While it cemented her cultural status, another 1927 production, Wings, secured her place in cinematic history through unprecedented industry recognition. This World War I aviation epic represented the most ambitious production of its era, a technical marvel featuring revolutionary aerial photography, massive battle sequences, and emerging technologies. Clara's role as Mary Preston initially seemed secondary to the male-centered aviation narrative. Despite limited screen time, Clara delivered such compelling emotional authenticity that she essentially hijacked the production. Her character, a young woman who joins the ambulance service to remain near her unrequited love, could easily have become merely decorative. Instead, Clara invested the character with genuine emotional texture that audiences found equally compelling as the spectacular aerial battles. Wings premiered August 12, 1927, receiving immediate critical acclaim for its technical achievements and powerful storytelling. When the inaugural Academy Awards ceremony occurred in 1929, Wings received the first-ever Best Picture award, establishing an enduring connection between Clara Bow and cinematic history's most prestigious honor. This period represented Clara's commercial zenith. Theater owners named her America's top box office attraction for 1927 and 1928. Surveys indicated unprecedented appeal across demographic categories. Men, women, urban sophisticates, and rural viewers alike responded enthusiastically to her performances. Clara's professional schedule during this peak period defies modern comprehension. Throughout 1927-1928, she typically worked 6-day weeks on multiple productions simultaneously. Studio call times often required arrival before dawn for makeup application, taking several hours. Between scenes, Clara conducted endless publicity photographs, costume fittings, and promotional interviews. This punishing schedule allowed minimal recovery time, a factor contributing to later health challenges. Despite these achievements, Clara received compensation significantly below contemporary male stars with comparable box office records. While the public perceived Clara as Hollywood royalty, her financial reality proved considerably less glamorous. Paramount consistently undervalued her contributions while extracting maximum commercial benefit from her popularity. The late 1920s introduced seismic technological change to Hollywood, the transition from silent films to talkies following 1927's The Jazz Singer. This evolution created existential anxiety throughout the industry as established stars wondered whether their voices would match public expectations. Unfounded rumors immediately circulated about Clara's voice, whispered campaigns suggesting her Brooklyn accent would prove too harsh for audiences. These rumors contained thinly veiled classism, suggesting Clara's working-class origins disqualified her from continued stardom despite demonstrated talent. Clara herself approached the challenge with characteristic determination. Rather than avoiding inevitable technological evolution, she advocated becoming one of Paramount's first major stars to embrace talking pictures. After vocal training to moderate but not eliminate her Brooklyn accent, Clara began production on The Wild Party 1929, her first all-talking feature. The Wild Party premiered March 29, 1929, immediately dispelling concerns about Clara's suitability for sound films. Her voice, warm, slightly raspy, with traces of Brooklyn's distinctive cadence, perfectly matched her established screen persona. Critics expressed surprise and relief, with photoplay declaring Clara's voice as Clara, vibrant, alive, and utterly natural. The successful transition represented extraordinary achievement given the numerous silent stars whose careers collapsed during technological evolution. Major performers including John Gilbert, Vilma Banky, and Norma Talmadge saw careers implode when their voices failed to match established images. Fame brings scrutiny. For Clara, whose natural expressiveness extended to her personal life, Increased attention proved particularly problematic. The Brooklyn girl who spoke without filters suddenly found every casual comment, relationship, or social misstep transformed into front-page news. Clara's dating life generated particular fascination. Having escaped Brooklyn's limitations, she approached relationships with characteristic enthusiasm and emotional openness. Brief relationships with actors Gary Cooper, Gilbert Roland, and director Victor Fleming generated endless speculation. Unlike contemporaries who maintained carefully constructed public images, Clara approached relationships with genuine emotional investment. By 1930, Clara's personal happiness increasingly diverged from professional achievement. Despite continued commercial success, Clara experienced growing dissatisfaction with her public persona. The effervescent girl image, initially liberating compared to Brooklyn limitations, increasingly felt like imprisonment. This period introduced increasing health challenges stemming from Clara's punishing schedule. Chronic insomnia, likely exacerbated by childhood trauma, left her perpetually sleep-deprived during demanding productions. Most concerning were occasional emotional breakdowns between scenes, moments when accumulated pressure temporarily overwhelmed her considerable resilience. Clara's most significant late career achievement came through genuine character development in Call Her Savage 1932, delivering perhaps her most complex performance, portraying a character whose self-destructive behavior stemmed from unresolved childhood trauma. Critics noted Clara's surprising dramatic depth, with several suggesting this performance revealed untapped potential beyond her established persona. By 1933, Clara had completed 35 sound productions alongside her silent filmography. The accumulated toll, physical, emotional, and psychological, increasingly manifested through health challenges requiring medical intervention. When Clara requested contract renegotiation, allowing reasonable work-rest balance, Paramount's intransigence precipitated her eventual departure from the industry that had simultaneously elevated and consumed her. Despite these mounting challenges, Clara Bow's achievements remain extraordinary by any standard. She successfully navigated the silent two-sound transition that destroyed countless contemporaries' careers and created an enduring cultural archetype, the it girl, that continues influencing popular culture nearly a century later. Behind Clara Bow's dazzling success lurked a darker reality of studio exploitation. Paramount ruthlessly capitalized on her box office appeal while systematically undermining her financial security and professional standing. Despite generating millions in revenue, Clara earned approximately $1,500 weekly, a fraction of contemporaries' $10,000 salaries for comparable box office performance. When Clara presented evidence of her commercial value, executives dismissed her with condescending reminders of her fortunate escape from Brooklyn poverty. The physical demands proved equally exploitative. Clara routinely filmed multiple productions simultaneously while maintaining exhaustive publicity schedules. Studio executives deliberately overbooked her appearances, creating impossible logistics that inevitably resulted in missed engagements, which they then characterized as unprofessional behavior to justify contract penalties. B.P. Schulberg, Clara's primary producer, cultivated unhealthy dependency through alternating praise and criticism. Studio memoranda reveal his deliberate strategy of keeping Clara grateful and insecure to prevent contract challenges. When Clara eventually attempted asserting professional boundaries, executives employed their most devastating tactic, threatening to reveal her mother's mental illness to the press, weaponizing her deepest family trauma against her. The 1931 scandal involving Clara's former secretary Daisy DeVoe represents Hollywood's ruthless publicity ecosystem at its worst. When Clara terminated DeVoe's employment over suspected financial improprieties, DeVoe retaliated through tabloid press, selling Clara's personal secrets while threatening further revelations. The tabloid newspaper The Coast Reporter published increasingly outlandish claims without evidence or journalistic standards. DeVoe provided unauthorized access to Clara's financial records, revealing gambling debts and impulsive purchases. More damagingly, She detailed Clara's romantic relationships, including alleged affairs with married industry figures. The most devastating allegations involved fabricated accounts of drug usage and sexual promiscuity with Hollywood luminaries. Clara faced this onslaught with minimal institutional support. Paramount provided only token legal assistance while privately discussing how to leverage the scandal for contract renegotiations. When criminal proceedings against DeVoe eventually occurred, the trial transformed into public spectacle with Clara subjected to humiliating questioning about private matters irrelevant to DeVoe's crimes. The public fallout revealed disturbing gender double standards. Male performers engaged in comparable behaviors without significant career damage, while Clara faced immediate conservative backlash. Theater owners in Midwestern and Southern regions canceled her films, citing moral concerns that conveniently emerged only after publicity rather than during her previous years of identical behavior. Clara's vibrant screen persona masked escalating health challenges directly connected to her punishing professional schedule and traumatic background. Sleep disturbances plagued her throughout her career, often remaining awake until dawn before finally succumbing to fitful rest lasting barely 3 hours. This chronic insomnia stemmed partially from childhood hypervigilance developed in her unpredictable home environment. Anxiety manifested through physical symptoms including racing heartbeat, chest pressure, and breathing difficulties during filming. Rather than addressing underlying causes, studio medical staff typically administered barbiturates or alcohol-based tonics that temporarily masked symptoms while creating additional health complications. By 1930, Clara exhibited concerning cognitive symptoms including concentration difficulties and short-term memory lapses. Studio physicians, lacking modern understanding of stress physiology, interpreted these symptoms as inherent psychological instability rather than environmental causation. The cumulative burden became evident through periodic nervous exhaustion episodes requiring hospitalization away from public knowledge. Studio records document at least 5 such incidents between 1928 to 1933, typically occurring immediately following demanding production schedules. By 1933, when Clara made her final film appearances, the accumulated physical and psychological toll had become visibly evident, ultimately necessitating her complete withdrawal from the industry that simultaneously elevated and consumed her. When Clara Bow appeared on screens in the early 1920s, acting methodology remained firmly rooted in theatrical traditions. Silent performers typically employed exaggerated gestures and stylized expressions developed for stage visibility. Against this mannered backdrop, Clara's naturalistic approach represented nothing short of revolutionary, introducing psychological realism decades before method techniques reached Hollywood. Clara's acting emerged not from formal training, but lived experience. Having never attended acting schools or studied theatrical techniques, she relied entirely on emotional intuition and observational skills developed during her Brooklyn childhood. Where contemporaries consciously constructed performances through learned techniques, Clara instinctively accessed authentic emotional states and allowed them unfiltered expression. Film historians identify several distinctive elements in Clara's revolutionary approach. Most fundamental was her emotional accessibility, the willingness to display vulnerability without protective artifice. Her extraordinary facial mobility allowed her to communicate complex emotional transitions without dialogue, happiness touched with melancholy, enthusiasm tinged with apprehension. Clara's physical naturalism distinguished her performances from technically proficient but physically artificial contemporaries. Her characters skipped instead of glided, laughed with full body abandon, and cried with messy realism rather than decorative tears. Perhaps most revolutionary was Clara's psychological continuity within scenes. Contemporary acting approaches treated each scene as discrete performance units. Clara intuitively understood character psychology required consistent internal logic, maintaining subtle emotional threads connecting scenes filmed weeks apart. Director Clarence Badger noted that Clara uniquely remembered her character's emotional journey between disconnected filming segments, creating cohesive performances where others delivered fragmented emotional moments. Clara independently developed techniques remarkably similar to those Stanislavski and later method practitioners would eventually formalize. Without theoretical framework or terminology, she instinctively accessed emotional memory, drawing from personal experiences to inform character responses. These approaches, developed through intuition rather than training, anticipated formal acting methodologies that wouldn't reach Hollywood until the 1950s. Clara Bow didn't merely portray flappers, she created, defined, and embodied the archetypal flapper that symbolized America's transformative 1920s. Through Clara, the theoretical new woman concept transformed from abstract sociological theory to vibrant reality that ordinary women nationwide could observe and potentially emulate. The flapper represented far more than merely fashionable appearance. She embodied fundamental social rebellion against Victorian restrictions. Clara's screen characters consistently displayed unprecedented independence. They pursued romantic interests rather than awaiting male initiative, expressed opinions without apologetic qualifiers, occupied public spaces without chaperones, and most radically, acknowledged female sexual desire without shame. Clara's physical presentation established the definitive flapper visual vocabulary that continues defining 1920s imagery. Her distinctive bobbed hair made a dramatic statement about prioritizing convenience over conventional beauty standards. Her characteristic makeup emphasized expressive eyes through dark kohl while creating the distinctive Cupid's bow lip shape. Her clothing choices, shorter hemlines, dropped waistlines, minimal undergarments, prioritized movement freedom over restrictive modesty. Most revolutionary was Clara's portrayal of female sexuality as natural rather than shameful. Prior screen presentations typically portrayed female desire as either non-existent or destructive moral failing. Clara's characters unabashedly experienced attraction, pursued desired partners, and enjoyed physicality without subsequent punishment narratives. The sex-positive approach reflected emerging psychological understanding of female sexuality, while directly challenging Victorian assumptions about inherent female purity requiring protection. The national response extended far beyond passive viewership into active emulation. Department stores nationwide reported overwhelming demand for clothing resembling Clara's screen wardrobe. Beauty parlors experienced floods requesting her distinctive bob hairstyle. Makeup companies developed products specifically replicating her look, with Clara Bow Red becoming standard lipstick descriptor. Beyond superficial fashion influence, Clara's flapper portrayal significantly impacted female aspirations. Fan correspondence reveals how Clara's characters inspired ordinary women toward greater independence, seeking employment, leaving unsatisfactory relationships, pursuing education, or simply expressing previously suppressed personality aspects. Clara Bow pioneered numerous technical innovations that fundamentally altered cinema's visual language. Her willingness to experiment with emerging technologies, challenge established filming conventions, and collaborate with innovative cinematographers established new possibilities for visual storytelling. Most significantly, Clara pioneered intimate camera techniques that transformed audience relationships with screen performances. Prior cinematographers typically maintained distance between camera and performers, approximately 6 to 10 feet, replicating theatrical viewing distance. Clara intuitively recognized this distance, created emotional separation between viewers and performances. In collaboration with cinematographer Alvin Wyckoff during its production, she advocated unprecedented close-up techniques, allowing viewers intimate access to microexpressions. These extreme close-ups created revolutionary intimacy. Viewers felt compellingly close to Clara's emotional experiences. Clara similarly revolutionized lighting techniques through creative collaboration with technicians. Early Hollywood employed flat, theatrical lighting that illuminated performers evenly regardless of emotional context. Clara recognized how variable lighting intensities could enhance emotional communication, suggesting specific lighting designs corresponding to her characters' psychological states. During Mantrap production, She worked with lighting technicians, developing what cinematographer James Wong Howe later termed emotional illumination. Lighting patterns specifically designed to enhance emotional communication rather than merely ensure visibility. Clara's approach to makeup as psychological communication rather than standardized beautification proved equally revolutionary. Early Hollywood makeup applications typically aimed toward uniform idealization, regardless of character circumstances. Clara rejected this approach, instead collaborating with makeup artists developing variable applications reflecting character psychology. Her distinctive techniques included subtly modifying lip shapes to suggest different emotional states, slightly varying eyebrow positions to indicate psychological shifts, and strategically applying blush patterns, suggesting different emotional temperatures. These technical innovations collectively transformed cinema's visual language from essentially recorded theater toward uniquely cinematic expression. By pioneering intimate camera relationships, she created unprecedented viewer connection with performers. Through developing emotionally responsive lighting techniques, she expanded visual vocabulary beyond mere illumination towards psychological communication. These innovations established foundational techniques that subsequent filmmakers built upon, creating visual grammar that continues informing contemporary cinema nearly a century later. Clara Bow's romantic history reveals a woman seeking authentic connection amid Hollywood's exploitative environment. Despite her wild girl public image, Clara approached relationships with surprising earnestness, searching for emotional security largely absent from her traumatic childhood. Her relationship patterns reflected classic attachment difficulties stemming from parental dysfunction. Clara typically pursued contradictory types, powerful industry figures offering professional protection echoing her absent father, and younger, less established men she could nurture replicating her relationship with her unstable mother. The psychological pattern explains her otherwise puzzling attraction to both controlling studio executives and struggling young actors simultaneously. Gary Cooper represented Clara's most significant Hollywood relationship. Their chemistry during Children of Divorce 1927 blossomed into genuine romance. Cooper, then an unknown extra, found Clara refreshingly unpretentious despite her stardom. Clara appreciated his straightforward masculinity devoid of Hollywood polish. The relationship lasted approximately 6 months before Cooper's skyrocketing career created competing professional schedules. Decades later, Cooper still spoke warmly of Clara, describing her as the most genuine person in a town of phonies. Director Victor Fleming provided both romantic attachment and mentorship. Their relationship during 1926 to 1927 coincided with Clara's artistic development, with Fleming encouraging her natural acting instincts rather than imposing technical constraints. When the relationship ended, Fleming remained professionally supportive, recommending Clara for roles even after their personal connection dissolved. This pattern of maintaining professional respect despite romantic dissolution distinguished Clara from contemporaries, who often engaged in bitter public feuds with former partners. Rex Bell represented Clara's ultimate romantic destination. Unlike previous Hollywood relationships, their connection began quietly away from publicity, meeting at a small gathering rather than studio function. Bell, a modestly successful Western actor, offered Clara qualities absent from previous relationships: emotional stability, unpretentious values, and privacy priorities matching her increasing desire for normalcy. Their 1931 marriage lasted until Clara's death, producing two sons, Tony and George, who provided the family connection Clara desperately craved throughout her difficult childhood. B.P. Schulberg, Clara's discoverer and primary producer at Paramount, represented the most complicated professional relationship of her career. While initially presenting himself as Clara's champion, Schulberg simultaneously exploited her commercially and emotionally. Studio correspondence reveals his calculated approach, praising Clara's performances while consistently underpaying her and undervaluing her contributions to the studio's financial success. This manipulative dynamic continued throughout their professional association, with Schulberg extracting maximum profit from Clara's popularity while providing minimal support during her personal crises. Director Clarence Badger proved more genuinely supportive. Their collaboration on It 1927 established mutual creative respect that transcended typical director-actress power dynamics. Badger recognized Clara's intuitive understanding of camera intimacy and emotional authenticity, designing scenes specifically showcasing these strengths rather than imposing conventional techniques. Their professional synergy produced Clara's most iconic performance and Badger's most commercially successful film. Yet industry sexism ensured Badger received primary credit for the artistic achievement they jointly created. Clara's relationship with novelist Eleanor Glynn significantly influenced her career trajectory. Glynn, already famous for controversial novels exploring female sexuality, immediately recognized Clara's unique appeal when casting it. Unlike studio executives focusing solely on Clara's commercial potential, Glynn appreciated her artistic instincts and emotional authenticity. Their collaboration transformed both women's careers, providing Clara with intellectual validation beyond her flapper image while associating Glynn with Hollywood's most vibrant embodiment of her literary concepts. Their mutual respect transcended the project, with Glynn defending Clara against media scandals long after their professional collaboration ended. Clara maintained surprisingly warm relationships with female co-stars despite Hollywood's competitive environment. Contrary to publicity departments' attempts to manufacture rivalries, Clara generally supported fellow actresses, particularly newcomers navigating Hollywood's treacherous environment. Actress Louise Brooks later recalled Clara's unexpected kindness when Brooks arrived on set insecure about her performance. Rather than exploiting this vulnerability, Clara offered practical advice about camera angles and lighting techniques that significantly improved Brooks' comfort and performance quality. This generosity toward potential competitors revealed Clara's security in her own talent and fundamental decency despite her challenging background. Clara's most significant familial relationship involved her complex connection with her mentally ill mother, Sarah. Despite Sarah's violent episodes, including her attempt to kill teenage Clara, Clara maintained financial support and regular hospital visits throughout her Hollywood success. This devotion reflects common patterns among children of mentally ill parents, assuming caretaking responsibilities and maintaining attachment despite threatening behavior. Clara's provision of private hospital care represented significant financial sacrifice, consuming substantial portions of her earnings despite her own modest compensation compared to contemporary stars. Clara's relationship with her exploitative father Robert remained problematically entangled throughout her early career. Despite his negligent parenting and alleged sexual boundary violations, Clara periodically provided financial support when Robert appeared making demands. This pattern, common among abuse survivors, reflected Clara's ongoing struggle for paternal approval despite overwhelming evidence of its impossibility. Only after establishing her relationship with Rex Bell did Clara finally establish boundaries with Robert, refusing further financial support without accountability. Clara's most healing relationships emerged through creating her own family with Bell. As mother to Tony and George, Clara consciously attempted breaking intergenerational trauma patterns, providing stability and affection her own childhood lacked. Despite periodic mental health challenges requiring occasional separations from her children, Clara maintained consistent maternal presence considerably more stable than her own childhood experience. Her sons later recalled Clara's determined efforts to create normal childhood experiences despite her celebrity status, prioritizing their emotional security over industry expectations throughout their formative years. By the early 1930s, Clara Bow faced a uniquely modern dilemma, reconciling her authentic self with the manufactured public persona that audiences demanded. While today's celebrities navigate similar challenges with support teams and mental health resources, Clara confronted these issues essentially alone. The it girl image, initially liberating, gradually became a prison. Studio publicity departments cynically amplified Clara's youthful exuberance into wild caricature, suggesting perpetual revelry and moral looseness. By 1930, Clara frequently expressed uncertainty about where Clara Bow the person ended and Clara Bow the product began. Clara's Brooklyn background created additional complications amid Hollywood's status hierarchy. Despite career success, she remained conscious of her working-class origins in an environment prioritizing aristocratic refinement. Studio executives repeatedly emphasized her limited education, implying her appeal stemmed from natural animalism rather than artistic intelligence, classist condescension that intensified Clara's persistent imposter syndrome. These pressures manifested through what contemporary accounts described as nervous disorders, likely representing anxiety and depressive symptoms under modern diagnostic frameworks. Clara experienced recurring panic attacks, developed persistent insomnia requiring increasingly potent medication, and reported dissociative episodes where she felt disconnected from her surroundings and identity. The press exacerbated these challenges through ruthless exploitation. Rather than recognizing Clara's psychological distress as a legitimate response to extraordinary pressure, publications framed her struggles as entertaining spectacle. Headlines like Clara Bow's latest nervous breakdown presented genuine medical emergencies as frivolous celebrity drama, further isolating Clara while suggesting her struggles indicated moral weakness. By 1931, Clara's psychological resilience showed increasing fractures. During production of Kick In, she experienced multiple onset breakdowns requiring filming suspension. Studio physicians documented these incidents while recommending she pull herself together through willpower, revealing profound misunderstanding of psychological distress as inadequate discipline rather than legitimate medical condition. Clara's psychological challenges reflected a complex interplay between genetic predisposition, childhood trauma, and environmental pressure. Her mother Sarah's documented schizophrenia suggests potential genetic vulnerability that Clara's traumatic childhood and subsequent career pressure likely activated into symptomatic expression. From earliest Hollywood arrival, Clara displayed characteristic anxiety symptoms including racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating, and persistent worry. These manifestations initially remained manageable through Clara's exceptional compensatory mechanisms, channeling nervous energy into performances and maintaining an exhaustive work schedule. However, as career demands increased while support resources remained minimal, these strategies eventually proved insufficient. Sleep disruption functioned as both symptom and exacerbating factor throughout Clara's career. Studio medical records document progressive deterioration in her sleep patterns between 1927 to 1933, from occasional insomnia requiring mild sedatives to complete sleep cycle disruption requiring pharmaceutical intervention. This chronic sleep deprivation undoubtedly contributed to emotional dysregulation, cognitive difficulties, and perceptual disturbances. By 1930, Clara exhibited symptoms consistent with what contemporary psychiatrists would classify as mixed anxiety depressive disorder. She experienced prolonged depressive episodes featuring anhedonia, fatigue, and occasional suicidal ideation documented in private correspondence, alternating with intense anxiety featuring both psychological symptoms and physical manifestations. Clara's relationship with alcohol and prescribed medications reflected attempts at managing these overwhelming symptoms without proper therapeutic support. Initially using alcohol moderately for social anxiety management, Clara gradually increased consumption as psychiatric symptoms intensified. Similarly, her use of prescribed barbiturates evolved from occasional sleep aid to regular self-medication. The most severe psychological crisis occurred following the DeVoe trial's conclusion in 1931. After months of public humiliation and privacy invasion, Clara experienced what modern clinicians would recognize as acute stress reaction featuring disorganized thinking, emotional lability, and brief psychotic features. Studio representatives arranged discreet hospitalization at an exclusive sanitarium outside Los Angeles. Clara's decision to leave Hollywood coincided with increasing recognition of her psychological vulnerability. Private correspondence with Rex Bell during this period reveals growing awareness that continued industry participation likely meant complete psychological collapse. Their relocation to Nevada's Walking Box Ranch represented strategic withdrawal from environments triggering psychiatric symptoms, essentially self-prescribed exposure reduction therapy. Clara's post-Hollywood life reveals complex challenges faced by former celebrities, navigating financial insecurity, public identity confusion, and personal reinvention without supportive infrastructure. While contemporary celebrities typically benefit from wealth management advisors and career transition consultants, Clara faced these challenges essentially alone while managing untreated mental health conditions. Financial insecurity emerged immediately despite Clara's apparent success. Having generated millions for studios, Clara personally retained minimal wealth due to exploitative contracts, unscrupulous business managers, and her own financial naivety. This precarity intensified through continuing obligations to her unstable parents, despite their historical exploitation and abuse. Robert Bow demanded regular payments while Sarah's institutional care required substantial funding, financial drains that significantly compromised Clara's long-term security. Identity reconfiguration posed equally challenging adjustment. Having defined herself through performance since adolescence, Clara suddenly faced existence without this central organizing principle. Former daily routines structured around filming schedules and studio obligations disappeared without replacement framework, creating profound purpose loss. Clara's coping mechanisms during this period reveal someone attempting self-prescribed therapeutic interventions without professional guidance. She initially embraced extreme isolation at Walking Box Ranch, essentially environmental management removing recognition triggers. While temporarily effective for anxiety reduction, this isolation simultaneously limited positive social engagement necessary for psychological health. Parenthood provided partial identity reconstruction following her sons' births in 1930 for Tony and 1936 George. Motherhood offered Clara previously unavailable purpose and connection independent from public recognition. However, recurring mental health episodes occasionally required separation from her children during hospitalization periods, creating guilty preoccupation that she was replicating her own mother's unreliable presence. Perhaps most poignantly, Clara experienced what psychologists would later term identity foreclosure through artificial limitation to her previous public persona. Despite intellectual capabilities and diverse interests documented in private correspondence, Clara found people exclusively interested in her past Hollywood experiences rather than her current perspectives. This reductionist treatment, limiting her identity to decades-old performances, created profound frustration evident in her eventual refusal to discuss her film career with anyone outside immediate family. Clara's final decades witnessed gradually increasing reclusiveness as she retreated from remaining public engagements. By the 1950s, she rarely left her home except for essential medical appointments. While newspapers characterized this withdrawal as bizarre behavior, it represented rational adaptation for someone whose public appearances reliably triggered psychiatric symptoms without compensatory benefits. When Clara died on September 27, 1965, at age 60, most Americans expressed surprise that the girl had still been alive. Having assumed her decades earlier disappearance from public view indicated death rather than deliberate withdrawal. Her passing generated brief renewed interest that quickly faded, temporarily reviving the caricature while continuing to ignore the remarkable woman behind the image. Among Clara Bow's relationships, her marriage to actor and future politician Rex Bell represents her most consequential personal connection, providing stability amid industry chaos and foundation for her post-Hollywood life. Their relationship defied typical Hollywood romance patterns through its genuine longevity and transformative impact. Their initial meeting occurred under remarkably ordinary circumstances compared to manufactured studio romances. While filming True to the Navy 1930, Clara encountered Bell, then a moderately successful Western actor, at a small industry gathering. Their connection developed organically through genuine compatibility rather than publicity value. Bell later recalled being impressed not by Clara's celebrity, but by her unexpected vulnerability and humor during their conversation about shared Brooklyn connections. What distinguished Bell from Clara's previous romantic interests was his fundamental security about his own identity. Unlike many Hollywood men intimidated by Clara's greater fame or attempting to exploit her celebrity, Bell maintained comfortable self-assurance that found Clara's professional success impressive rather than threatening. This security created unprecedented dynamic where Clara experienced acceptance of her complete personhood rather than either idealization of her screen persona or resentment of her achievements. Their courtship proceeded with remarkable privacy for someone previously subjected to relentless public scrutiny. Rather than nightclub appearances or studio-arranged photo opportunities, their relationship developed through private dinners, horseback riding excursions, and quiet evenings away from Hollywood's social circuits, allowing authentic connection impossible within publicity-driven interactions characterizing Clara's previous relationships. The December 1931 wedding occurred with minimal fanfare in Las Vegas, deliberately avoiding media circus that typically accompanied celebrity marriages. Their preference for privacy rather than publicity represented significant shift in Clara's approach to personal milestones, previously exploited for promotional value. The marriage's most transformative aspect emerged through Bell's purchase of the Walking Box Ranch in Nevada, a 400,000-acre cattle operation representing complete environmental contrast to Hollywood's artificial landscapes. This remote property provided Clara unprecedented insulation from public scrutiny while simultaneously offering constructive purpose beyond performance. Contemporary accounts describe Clara embracing ranch activities with characteristic enthusiasm, learning cattle management, participating in local community events, and developing practical skills entirely disconnected from her previous entertainment identity. Most significantly, Bell provided essential stability during Clara's recurring mental health crises. Unlike previous partners who abandoned Clara during psychiatric episodes, Bell maintained consistent support throughout hospitalizations and recovery periods. His advocacy ensured Clara received available treatment options rather than secretive studio-managed interventions, prioritizing publicity protection over therapeutic efficacy. Clara Bow's decision to permanently leave Hollywood in 1933 represented far more than typical career transition. It constituted radical self-preservation strategy from someone who recognized the industry's fundamentally destructive impact on her well-being. While standard narratives often characterize her departure as career failure following sound transition, examination of circumstances reveals remarkably self-aware choice prioritizing survival over continued exploitation. The departure process began gradually rather than through dramatic single decision. Following extensive medical consultations regarding her deteriorating mental health, Clara initially requested extended production hiatus for recovery in early 1931. Paramount's response proved telling. Executives agreed to temporary pause while simultaneously leaking stories to gossip columnists suggesting Clara's moral character rather than legitimate health concerns necessitated the break. This institutional betrayal crystallized Clara's growing recognition that the studio viewed her as expendable commodity despite her significant financial contributions. Clara's final film, Hoopla 1933 for Fox Film Corporation after departing Paramount, reflected consciously designed exit strategy rather than career desperation. The production offered favorable terms including limited working hours, substantial recovery breaks between filming days, and minimal publicity obligations, conditions specifically arranged to accommodate Clara's health requirements. This approach, prioritizing well-being over promotional exploitation, represented Clara's first professional experience with reasonable working conditions throughout her career. Clara's selection of Nevada residence location revealed sophisticated understanding of both legal and psychological considerations. The state's restrictive press access laws provided substantial protection against journalistic intrusion compared to California's celebrity hostile regulations. Additionally, the remote ranch location created physical buffer against uninvited visitors that urban settings couldn't provide. This carefully considered relocation demonstrated Clara's strategic thinking beyond impulsive escape. She sought comprehensive environment supporting sustained recovery rather than temporary retreat. Financial considerations complicated Clara's departure decision. Despite generating millions for studios throughout her career, exploitative contract structures left Clara with limited personal assets requiring careful management for long-term security. Her acceptance of several final film offers despite deteriorating health partially reflected financial necessity rather than artistic motivation, highlighting particularly gendered aspect of early Hollywood exploitation, where female performers typically received fraction of male counterparts' compensation, despite equal or greater box office performance. Most significantly, Clara's departure represented pioneering rejection of fame culture's fundamental premise that celebrity status compensates for any accompanying damage. Decades before systematic research documented fame's psychological hazards, Clara intuitively recognized that public adoration's benefits couldn't justify private devastation's costs. Her willingness to relinquish stardom's privileges while accepting financial uncertainty demonstrated remarkable self-awareness, largely unrecognized by standard biographical treatments emphasizing failed career rather than successful self-preservation. The final decades of Clara Bow's life reveal someone gradually reconstructing identity beyond the artificial constraints of her Hollywood persona while managing persistent mental health challenges. Rather than the simplified reclusive former star narrative frequently presented in superficial accounts, Clara's later years demonstrated continued personal evolution despite significant obstacles. Following Hollywood departure, Clara initially embraced ranch life with characteristic enthusiasm. Contemporary accounts describe her active participation in walking box ranch operations, learning cattle management, entertaining local community members, and developing practical skills entirely disconnected from entertainment industry requirements. This period represented Clara's first adult experience with identity development based on genuine interests rather than external expectations. Motherhood provided Clara's most meaningful later life role. Despite lacking positive parental models from her own childhood, Clara approached raising her sons with determined commitment to breaking intergenerational trauma patterns. Friends and family described her parenting style as affectionate, attentive, and protective, qualities entirely absent from her own upbringing. Her conscious efforts toward creating stable environment directly countered the chaos characterizing her Brooklyn childhood. Clara's intellectual development during these years contradicts popular narratives suggesting limited capacity beyond performance talents. Private correspondence reveals extensive reading habits focused particularly on psychology, philosophy, and history. Local librarians recalled her regular requests for specific academic books reflecting sophisticated interests entirely inconsistent with the simple flapper characterization perpetuated through simplified biographical accounts. Mental health management remained Clara's persistent challenge throughout later life. Without access to modern psychiatric treatments or accurate diagnosis, she relied on periodic hospitalization during acute episodes while attempting self-management strategies between crises. These efforts included environment modification, careful routine maintenance, and eventually identifying early warning signs, allowing preventive intervention before full symptomatic expression. Essentially self-developed cognitive behavioral techniques demonstrating remarkable psychological insight. The few individuals permitted into Clara's restricted social circle consistently described personality markedly different from her public image. Rather than the perpetually exuberant flapper of screen portrayals, Private Clara demonstrated thoughtful introspection, unexpected intellectual depth, and quiet wisdom gained through extraordinary experiences. When Clara died on September 27, 1965, at age 60, she had lived over 3 decades beyond her Hollywood departure, longer than many contemporaries' entire careers. Media coverage of her passing focused almost exclusively on her brief cinema career, while largely ignoring the complex woman who had existed for decades beyond those performances, essentially freezing Clara at her 1920s peak while ignoring her subsequent development. Clara Bow's cultural influence extends far beyond her brief film career, resonating through subsequent decades in ways that continue shaping contemporary understanding of celebrity, femininity, and performance authenticity. While many silent-era stars faded into historical footnotes, Clara's impact remains remarkably vibrant across artistic disciplines. Most significantly, Clara pioneered the modern concept of the authentic celebrity, someone whose appeal stems from perceived genuine personality rather than manufactured perfection. Before Clara, stars typically projected aristocratic refinement regardless of actual origins. Her revolutionary approach, maintaining her Brooklyn accent, expressing unfiltered opinions, and displaying genuine emotional responses, established template for accessible stardom later adopted by figures from Marilyn Monroe to Jennifer Lawrence. Clara similarly revolutionized female sexuality representation through portrayals combining frankness with agency. Prior cinematic approaches presented female sexuality as either non-existent virginal innocence or destructive vampish temptresses. Clara introduced unprecedented middle path, portraying women experiencing desire as natural aspect of complete personhood rather than defining characteristic. Modern sex symbols, from Monroe to Madonna, directly reference Clara's pioneering integration of sexuality within complete characterization rather than reductive objectification. Perhaps most enduringly, Clara's it girl designation transcended specific historical context to become permanent linguistic fixture. Nearly a century after Eleanor Glynn's original concept, it girl remains immediately recognizable terminology requiring no explanation across generational or cultural boundaries. Contemporary publications regularly apply this designation to emerging talents, perpetuating Clara's legacy through linguistic immortality few performers achieve. Clara's influence on performance methodology similarly transcends her era's limitations. Her naturalistic acting approach, initially criticized by contemporaries accustomed to theatrical techniques, anticipated method acting innovations by decades. Directors from Francois Truffaut to Martin Scorsese have specifically cited Clara's naturalistic expressiveness as inspiration for their performers, explaining why her performances retain remarkable freshness compared with technically accomplished but fundamentally theatrical contemporaries. Film scholarship has increasingly recognized Clara's technical innovations beyond mere personality appeal. Her pioneering approaches to camera relationship, lighting utilization, and makeup application as psychological communication established foundational techniques still employed in contemporary filmmaking. Directors including Quentin Tarantino have specifically cited Clara's understanding of visual storytelling as influence on their cinematographic approaches. Popular culture continues referencing Clara through both direct homage and indirect influence. Taylor Swift's 2024 song Clara Bow explicitly connects contemporary fame experiences with Clara's pioneering navigation of celebrity challenges. The 2011 film The Artist based Peppy Miller character substantially on Clara's biography and performance style. Television series including Boardwalk Empire and Babylon incorporate Clara-inspired characters representing 1920s liberation. Clara Bow's enduring significance extends beyond specific artistic contributions to encompass broader cultural impact, reshaping fundamental understanding of stardom, female agency, and performance authenticity. While her films represent important historical documents, her lasting influence transcends these individual works to establish paradigms continuing to shape contemporary entertainment. Clara's most profound impact involves pioneering celebrity authenticity, now considered essential for sustained stardom. Before Clara, performers typically maintained artificial public personas entirely disconnected from their actual personalities. Clara shattered this paradigm through revolutionary transparency about her background, opinions, and emotions. Contemporary stars including Jennifer Lawrence and Lizzo directly reference Clara's influence on their similarly authentic public approaches. Female behavioral liberation represents another enduring Clara contribution. Her characters consistently demonstrated unprecedented agency, making decisions, expressing desires, and determining personal boundaries without seeking male approval. Contemporary feminist scholars recognize Clara's pioneering significance in normalizing female independence through entertainment channels reaching audiences potentially resistant to explicit political messaging. Clara similarly revolutionized physical expression possibilities for women. Victorian-era restrictions had severely limited acceptable female movement, emphasizing restraint, minimal exertion, and controlled gestures. Clara's physical performances shattered these limitations through characters who moved energetically, expressed emotions physically, and occupied space dynamically rather than decoratively. Contemporary dance, athletics, and everyday movement patterns continue reflecting this fundamental liberation. Academic recognition of Clara's significance has substantially increased through feminist film scholarship's evolution. Early cinema studies typically emphasized male directors' contributions while treating actresses primarily as visual attractions. Contemporary approaches increasingly recognize Clara's substantial creative agency within supposedly director-controlled productions. Film scholars including Janine Basinger and Anthony Slide have specifically documented Clara's technical innovations that fundamentally altered cinematic storytelling approaches. Clara's influence extends particularly strongly among contemporary performers seeking authentic connection beyond technical perfection. Actresses including Michelle Williams have specifically cited Clara's emotional vulnerability as inspiration for their approaches. Directors including David Lynch have referenced Clara's ability to communicate complex emotional states without dialogue when discussing visual storytelling techniques. Cultural institutions have increasingly acknowledged Clara's historical significance through preservation efforts, ensuring her work remains accessible for future generations. The Library of Congress National Film Registry includes multiple Clara Bow features, recognizing their cultural, historical, or aesthetic significance. Film restoration projects have specifically prioritized Clara's surviving films, with organizations including the Film Foundation providing funding for technical preservation. As we approach Clara Bow's work from our contemporary vantage point, her performances retain remarkable freshness precisely because they prioritize timeless human emotional truth over era-specific technical conventions. The Brooklyn girl who instinctively understood that genuine feeling transcends artificial presentation established principles that remain foundational to effective visual storytelling across constantly evolving media landscapes. While studio executives, production technologies, and distribution platforms continue changing, Clara's fundamental insight about authentic emotional connections primacy remains as relevant today as when she first captivated audiences with that indefinable quality they could only call it